All right. Well, we are rolling with our first podcast with the Freedom Project, a little subset of Nurse for That, where we're going to be talking about health and not just health in the way that I guess most people think about health. It's health related to the spiritual, the mental, the physical, also the relational, financial. All these elements have a core component in how they affect our health. And I think myself in the past has definitely thought about health this way, where it's just simply like nutrition or exercise and medicine, and like that's it. But it's so much more than that. It's a well-rounded, all parts of life aspect of that. So I'm really excited to just learn more about this from you and your background in the medical community. Yeah, I just think that, this is just really what's needed, is that, the education for how all these different elements of life really affect health. I think it's going to be really, really cool. So I think just first and foremost, just kind of go through and just kind of talk about our backgrounds, how we got here, and just kind of give people an understanding of where we're coming from on different topics. So I'll open up the floor to you to introduce yourself and how you got to here, and your background with Nurse for That too, because that's really cool.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. We've talked about this for a while now, and I just feel like God has really led us to where we're supposed to be. So thank you for helping this all get started. My name is Kaleigh, and I have been a nurse for 13 years. I went to Texas A&M, and then I went to Tech for nursing school. Met my husband out there, which is super fun, and have been a NICU nurse for almost 10 years. 12 years. 12 years a NICU nurse. I just stepped away in January when I had our third baby. But if I take it back to the beginning, when I first graduated from Texas Tech, I was working night shift because that's what they like for new nurses to do. You get out and you grind. And we love adrenaline, especially in the ICU. So, I was picking up like 5 night shifts a week, just living the dream. And then I hit a wall. I got really sick. Like most people in functional health, you're either, sick, or you've known someone that is sick, and that's how you know about functional medicine. But
is that like burning the candle at both ends, or just being around a lot of sick people, or a combination of the two?
Burning the candle at both ends. Okay. And I'll talk about that later, but I really have learned that your health is more based on your mental health and your truly your mental health than it is anything else. So now, I see sick people all of the time, and I never get sick. So I was working in Lubbock 5 nights a week. I ended up getting I think it was like the flu, mono, and strep all in 1 month. And I didn't have a primary care doctor because I had just moved from College Station to Lubbock, and I was drinking entirely too much and not eating the right kinds of foods. I mean, I didn't take a vitamin, I was just, and then you put in night shift on top of that. So you start working nights where you're opposite of the circadian rhythm. I was essentially doing everything opposite to my body that it needed. So Thank God he allowed that suffering in, because it was the only thing that stopped me. So I went to the doctor in Lubbock. They sent me away with Xanax, an antidepressant, and levothyroxine, so like Synthroid, thyroid meds, all from one appointment. So my first ever visit with them, literally they send me home with those 3 meds at 21 years old. So that was a little bizarre. I go to Dallas, get a second opinion from my OB-GYN, kind of sends me home with the exact same thing. He's like, instead of Xanax, let's do Ativan. That was his modification. And then, thank God, again, my mom had a patient who was a functional medicine doctor in Rockwall. And my mom, we're going to have to get a sign.
I know, it says on air.
This is legit. Yeah. We're going to need a sign for the door. My mom, thank God, in Rockwall had a patient that was a functional medicine doctor in Rockwall. And so she was like, and at this time, I mean, I was just working, had, living paycheck to paycheck for sure, boatload of student loans. And she was like, let's just like give this guy a chance. Like, let's get this other opinion. I really don't think you're supposed to be on all these medications.
And like, I'm not in the medical space. When you say functional medicine, like, how would you describe what functional medicine is apart from anything else?
That's a really good point. I think even at that time, he didn't call himself that. He called himself an integrative doctor. So we're talking just believes in alternative medicine. So functional medicine is root cause medicine. So like getting to the root cause, which there's some people out there that say like, well, no, there isn't one root cause. And I might actually be one of those people now.
Life's complicated. So
it's complicated.
There's multiple.
If we've learned anything from the Bible or from just living daily life, it's never just one thing, right? Yeah. He was integrative, right? Integrative, holistic, functional. For me personally, I kind of throw all those around. There are people that will say different, but for me, it's just, okay, we're going to go at this from like a more natural approach. We're going to look at the whole picture instead of this like one symptom, right? That's kind of my definition of it. I try not to split hairs on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just, as I come, I'm not in the medical community, right? So I come in and I feel like at times the medical community is like, this term for this and stuff. And sometimes I'm like, hold on a second. I don't get it because I'm not in it, or been in the classes and stuff where the discussions have been made. And so I'm assuming there's probably going to be a lot more people like me listening about this going, what's the difference between functional medicine and traditional?
Thank you for saying that because you're totally right. I remember that I used to
like
deep dive into that.
Quite a bit of questions just for clarification. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you go to functional medicine. What was his approach and what was your experience like going to him?
He was amazing. I remember I go in and it's like, he just has these stickers everywhere that say love is healing. And I'm like, what kind of hippie place has my mom like got me into? Even though it was a really nice office. When you hear love is healing and I just spent all this time at school and like, it just I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And I go in and he just looks at me and he's like, you're 21. You just need to like put your superwoman cape back on. You're going to be fine. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you've just like lost your cape. You need to put your cape back on. And I was like, what? Like I had no idea what he was saying. What he meant by that was I had ran myself down. I just needed to build myself back up. And he was right. He put me on a 12-week detox. So I remember it was summertime. My boyfriend had broken up with me, my now husband. Thanks a lot, honey. But it was all part of God's plan. No, he had broken up with me. I got my wisdom teeth out. I was super sick. Like it was just like terrible.
All the bad things happening at once.
Horrible. Yeah. And no wonder everyone thought I was crazy and depressed because I was crying all the time. I mean, it was just like a lot. And I was young. But so he puts me on a 12-week candida cleanse where essentially it's like you don't eat sugar, gluten, or dairy. You cut out all inflammatory foods for 12 weeks. And when I tell you at the end of that 12 weeks, I had never felt better than I had ever felt in my entire life. Like I lived with my dad in high school and God love him. I mean, he was the best dad, but we ate a lot of Taco Bell. Okay. And so I was kind of always the kid at school with like my head on my desk. Like I was pretty tired. And so when I felt what it felt like to like cook all of my meals, literally I ate all of my own food for 12 weeks and never felt better. And during that time, I actually started volunteering in the church nursery in Rockwall. And because I had all this margin now. So like I went from being really tired and depressed and sad to now feeling energized, mental clarity, energy. Sure. I would love to rock babies at church on Sundays. I have the margin for that.
More capacity.
Yeah, I have more capacity. Yeah. And that was when God first kind of said to me, like, look what this does for people. Like when you feel good, like that is when you have you can have more margin to like, I'm not saying you have to feel good to like further the kingdom, but it does sure help to have some energy.
So you're an ineffective agent of the kingdom if your health is in a bad position. You're basically a useless soldier.
I mean, you could say it like that, yes. I mean, I don't think you're ever useless. I think there's definitely Paul wrote all those letters from prison, right? Like, I'm sure his health was pretty bad.
Yeah, for sure.
But in our day and age, like, am I going to bring more people to heaven having energy out on a walk every day, out in the community thriving, or in my room doom scrolling and crying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, it just, God really just plucked me out. Like, he literally, by his grace, I went to that doctor, didn't take any of those meds. Thank goodness. I think I tried to take the antidepressant for like 3 days and I felt so terrible. And what they tell you is they're like, oh no, you just have to keep taking it. But my intuition, I was just like, what? No, like, no, it felt super dark. And so, yeah, thank God I came out of that. And then after that, I mean, I didn't just automatically like get all of this knowledge. It was a slow trickle, right? Like I slowly started learning things.
So you have been trained in traditional medicine from professors at the school, right? And then you go to the functional medicine, and it's completely different than what you've been taught in school, right?
Yes. And
so now it's just kind of opening you up to a whole different side of health that you haven't really seen before. It prompted you just to start asking questions, right?
Yes. And this is kind of gross. I remember I was working on the NICU in Dallas, and I had to do a heavy metal test, which is like, you have to collect your urine for 24 hours. And I mean, like, y'all, I mean, it was very sterile. Like, I was very like clean about it, but like, can you imagine carrying that around for 24 hours?
You have your little collection.
Like, you have your little collection. And it wasn't like a ton. Like, you just got a little tiny sample. But like, I mean, like, I was a 21-year-old literally working in the NICU. Like, anyways, like most 21-year-olds aren't doing that. But so it was just funny, like things like that along the way that I like learned, and I got more data and information. And then, it really shifted for me. Like, I kind of just coasted along after that because I felt so good. So I've learned, like, when you detox, you can kind of retox for a long time and still feel pretty good. So I still was not a purist by any means after that. But I felt great for a long time. And then we got married, had my first child, and that was when the mama bear really came out. And I started doing the deep dives of like, oh no, I'm caring for this human. Got some nudges from the Holy Spirit when we were at the PD appointments that made me like really question everything. And so having him was really what changed it all. And I started researching everything.
Yeah, isn't that funny as a parent? Like, you're like, you don't really care that much about yourself, but the moment you're responsible for somebody else, it's like very important all of a sudden.
Oh yeah, I mean, that kid was sipping celery juice from like, 7 months. And oh gosh, my poor third child, she's already had ice cream, so that's a topic for another day. But the pendulum definitely swung, and it was a good season. All of this was by God's grace. Like, it was not, I couldn't have chosen this. Like, he did it all. He gave me all the wisdom. He put me in contact with people who knew better than I did. And then I definitely made some enemies at work. It was a little awkward. And I was not
What do you mean by that? Just because you were questioning the status quo of medicine and bringing up alternative methods? Like, what do you mean by making enemies?
Let's see if this is, you always get, this is funny. This is what they do to you. So my head immediately goes, can they sue me for this? Can I say this? And I totally can. So one of the first thing I learned with my son, because he had seizures. So I like went down the vaccine rabbit hole and all of that. And I'm not like anti-vax. I just like wanted to know what was in them, and I wanted to know what everyone else knew that I didn't know or whatever. And so I researched about hepatitis B. And I mean, this was in 2017, 18. So pre all the political drama, pre everything, right? It was kind of just budding up as a topic. And I found a great educational online course that I took. And she goes over each vaccine, and she was just very like nonchalant. Like, she was just like, I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I'm going to tell you the vaccine, what's in it, why you give it, about the disease, and like when you need it and when you don't. I was like, cool. Well, when she starts going through them, and she's like, hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease. you can get it from having sex or coming in contact with bodily fluids, blood, whatever, from another person. So that's what it's for. And in my head, I mean, I'm a NICU nurse, so I've probably given 1,000 hepatitis B vaccines, and I'm just like, to a 1-day-old baby for a sexually transmitted disease. Okay, I'm going to need to research that more. And actually, a doctor on our unit, I had a discussion with him about it because we are friends, and he gave me a book because he was very much for the hepatitis B vaccine. And the book was not very persuasive. The argument is that they started giving hepatitis B vaccine to every single baby after Vietnam. So all these soldiers were going over to Vietnam, coming back, having the STD. Unfortunately, the wives thought they were not cheating on them, obviously, but a lot of people were overseas. So they're bringing back all these STDs, and they were like, these men are coming back with their wives, and their wives are having these babies, and they're having hepatitis B. And they don't know they have hepatitis B because the wife hasn't been cheating. She doesn't know. And so they were like, we're just going to blanket treat. We're only going to see a dip in this. We blanket treat every baby. And we have been giving it ever since.
And the basic concept of a vaccine, right, is you give somebody a small dose of that virus, that antigen or whatever, so that they can defeat that and build immunity to it, right? So essentially you're giving them a very, very small dose of hepatitis B. Is that a good understanding of that?
So,
that's been my understanding of how vaccines work.
Yes. And I'm no vaccine expert by any means, but there are live vaccines and not live. And hepatitis B is not a live vaccine. So my understanding is you give like part of the you give part of the makeup of it. So you're giving some of the DNA of the strain or whatever. Like I think it maybe even is like part of like fragments of the cell. And then your body can pick up on that DNA and you can be immune to it. And I'm botching that terribly, I know, by a scientist. Like, I'm not a scientist, but like I'm botching it, but that's the gist. But so there's live and not live. And there's so much that we don't know. I've read a lot of different studies with a lot of different arguments. And my take on it is just, I decided for the Hep B. Colin had already received it, but my other kids, I was just like, you know what? Chase and I know that we are in a committed relationship, and I've explained it to him that like, hey man, if you ever need to let me know if we are at risk for hepatitis B, I need to know for the kids too. Like we just explain it like that. And so like the girls, we will tell them when they're about 12 or beyond that like, hey, this is why we would take this vaccine and we need to do this before we're active or whatever, and just come at it from like a biblical perspective. But I lost my thought.
Talk about learning about hepatitis B as a vaccine and making enemies.
Okay, thank you. So, but back to the hospital setting. So what I started doing is I started giving informed consent to the parents. So I would say, hi, okay, so today it's time for your baby to get the hepatitis B vaccine. They're 24 hours old. Just so you know, hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease. So if you've had another partner, multiple sexual partners, or if you've been exposed to like a dirty needle or any blood or bodily fluids from like a bite, like the baby needs the vaccine. And they would just look at me with their jaws dropped because that is not what they like think this is for, right? Yeah. And so I would say like 9 times out of 10, they would opt out of it. And I don't know this for sure, but I think perhaps, obviously, it was obvious that like most of the people that were declining it, like I was their nurse. And so I did notice people start to like wonder what I was saying. And I'm like, I'm literally reading the sheet. Like I'm reading to them off the sheet what this is, the side effects, yada, yada. And when the parents hear the truth, they don't want to give it. Like I wasn't giving any of my personal opinion. I was just stating what the disease was and how you get it. So
from more the hospital side, I guess they're reviewing all the sheets, seeing who's giving out what vaccines, right? And I've heard things, and I don't know, this is why I'm asking, but do the hospitals get incentivized by the amount of vaccines that they give? So that would be why they were reviewing that and calling that into question.
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I never really investigated that. I just know that like the pharmacist got more diligent about coming around and trying to schedule the vaccine. So like the pharmacist would come around and they would schedule it. And this is all very like polarizing, right? So like I knew what I loved. One thing I really loved about working in the NICU was that I was surrounded by different walks of life and people who didn't believe the same thing as me every single day. I mean, like there's 100 of us at any given time between parents and nurses and doctors, pharmacists, whoever on the unit, housekeepers, like front desk people that I got really close with. And I love them, right? Like I love them. I love learning from them. I loved hearing their political perspectives and social perspectives and religious perspectives. And I loved them the same. And it was so nice to be able to like disagree and like still have this like really close relationship with these people. And I did notice that when this all became really complicated during COVID, that there was definitely like some dynamic shifts. Like people got really polarized. Like they couldn't understand why anyone would not vaccinate. You like hated everyone if you weren't vaccinated. And that was hard. I mean, it was really hard.
I remember that whole process, was like I wanted to ask questions and learn things, but, you were just being yelled at for not just blindly following it. And it's like, shouldn't we understand something before we just go with it, especially when it's your children, right? And it's always been strange to me how people get so charged up over the vaccine issue, where it's like, number one, it's not your kid, it's my kid. And I'm just trying to figure out what's best for him. Like that should be the focus, right? It's that like you're trying to do the best thing for the children. And we should call everything into question just to make sure it's the best thing possible, right? It doesn't mean that it's absolutely wrong, but it's weird that, if you ask questions, you're a bad person.
Yes.
And it's always been just really strange. And so that for me is I immediately want to start looking at, well, what's the motive? Why is there so much emotion behind it? Because it doesn't make sense.
Well, I think we've all been trained on it. And then I do understand the perspective. Like I have a friend who lost her son and they were, immunocompromised. And so if my child was immunocompromised, then that means that everyone else around him, in theory, right? This is the theory of how vaccines work. If we have herd immunity, then like their child is more protected because they can't get the vaccine. They actually cannot get it. And so that's why they can say, oh, well, you just like don't care about the least of these, or you don't care about these immunocompromised kids, or, like your kid's healthy. Why would you not just vaccinate them so that you can protect this like vulnerable population? And you know what? Like, I'm totally cool with like maybe that being true. Like, I'm fine if like research comes back and says like, we messed up. We do need herd immunity. Like, we need this to protect these kids, right? Yeah. What Dr. McWhorter has taught me is that there are genetic factors to detoxing. So you have to have an irritant in a vaccine for it to promote an immune response. So like that's why they add in the aluminum. That's why they add in all of the bad laundry list that everyone sees online of formaldehyde. And like, that's why they add all those bad ingredients. They're not like trying to kill us, right? Like nobody's like purposefully putting these in saying, I want to hurt children. They're putting it in because there has to be an irritant to elicit an immune response.
Gotcha.
And I think that part is a little confusing for some people.
Yeah, I've never had anybody actually explain that to me as to why they put that in there. Because you see that and people go, this is harmful. And I'm like, so why are they putting that in there? And your brain wants to immediately jump to, they want to hurt me or they want to be destructive. So that makes a lot more sense as to why that would even be in there. Because I think if you're just following the data without asking further questions and you say, hey, these cells aren't waking up, they're not responding, so we need to aggravate them. Let's do this. But it just seems like then they don't look beyond that. Is this actually a good way to go about it or not? That they just say, hey, we got the result that we wanted, let's keep it in there. And then I think because, I've heard a lot of discussion about it. I've never heard that. As to why they put the irritants in there. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, now I have more understanding as to why. And so what's good about that is I think then you can go further in the conversation and be like, hey, is there any other way we can maybe look at alternative methods if we do need to have a vaccine? Because there are extreme cases where maybe that's the only shot, or you have to do something drastic. And then we should be talking about maybe alternative methods. But anyways, I think that was really helpful, at least for me.
Good.
just
Yeah, I mean,
and most of the time, I guess, whenever I get on these topics, is that the emotions get so charged so
I know.
quickly that we never really get anywhere.
Well, and that's why I wanted to do this, because I really consider myself, like, I love to learn both sides of any argument, right?
Yes.
Like, I want to know, because I know all of my brothers and sisters in Christ, like, or even not, any person, right? Any human, like, most of us have our goal is like to have a best interest, right? Like we want to do the right thing, or that's in our nature, you know? And so people, even if they're like steered wrong, in my opinion, maybe my opinion's wrong, maybe my judgment has been clouded. And so I would like to know all of the options, and then I want to make an educated decision on like what's best. And where this comes in, of what Dr. McWhorter has taught me, is where I actually, when I mentioned the unsteadiness in the pediatrician's office with my son, looking back now, that was only Holy Spirit intervention. So like, I would take him, at this time, I'm a NICU nurse. I've given 1,000 Hep B shots, right? I'm taking my son in to get his shots on schedule. And every single time I would go into the office, I just had this overwhelming anxiety. And at first, my husband and I just kind of attributed it to like postpartum stuff, you know, that like I was just having all those struggles. And then when he had the seizures and I started reading, I was like, no, the Holy Spirit was nudging me to stop this, that like he did not need these vaccines. And the reason for that is there are some genetic factors that make some people not detox as well as others. So that's why some kids, and I say that's why, hypothetically, that is why some kids can get a vaccine healthy as a horse. No problems. They continue on with life. No issues, right? Some kids have this huge reaction. Their immune system fires off stronger than someone else's. The theory is that some kids don't methylate well, or they don't detox well. And there's lots of different ones. So I used to think there was just MTHFR. Dr. McWhorter has explained, and he will in the future here explain, that there are so many different genetic variations for detoxing that you can test to find out if you're more susceptible to having a vaccine reaction or not. So, I mean, my like naive la la land is, I'm like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if like every kid could get tested and we could know which kids need more protection than others? Like, I mean, and well, that's what no one's talking about.
And that makes sense, right? Is like, if, you know, obviously if there's somebody who is strong, like a bodybuilder or something like that, right? You obviously don't need to go tell that guy you need to get in the gym, right? And so it's the same concept, right? Of like finding people who are in need of those treatments, and then only addressing those if they're in need of it first, instead of just doing the blanket treatments like you were talking about.
Yes, because there is some good research that it's like the amount of children that have a reaction potentially is definitely more than the children that are dying of these diseases. So what are we doing, you know? And people will argue that and say that one study is not accurate or whatever. But like the reality is we need more data. And the problem is for it to be ethical research, you can't do research on children or pregnant women. So that's why we don't have it.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing, you know, to navigate as well. And I know that we're going to get into, you know, further discussions on, you know, future episodes, that type of thing. As far as, you know, you're talking about the herd response, and I know that's where I clashed a lot with, you know, people on that too, because coming from a biblical background, it's like God has designed our bodies to fight off disease and stuff like that. Now I'm fully aware that older people, maybe immune compromised people, would be more at risk for that, but it's not the responsibility of everybody else to inject themselves with things or to change their, you know, way of life for those people only. And that, you know, if we understand there's a design and a creator, we should be relying on that to protect us rather than us trying to come up with the solution ourselves. And so that's where I was coming at it, you know, from that standpoint. And I know that a lot of other people, you know, come at it from the standpoint of like, we got to jump in and do something. You know, we got to take control over it.
Yeah.
And and it was so much emotion, which was crazy about that whole time. It's like, can we sit down and have a conversation? It was just like a lot of shouting and yelling and just like, you don't agree with this? Like, I don't know if I can be around you.
And
like,
I mean, I lost friends for sure.
I was like, are we in crazy world right now? And I was just thinking about that today while we were driving up here. It's like, we don't even think about COVID. It was only 5 years ago. But what a crazy time and a crazy world. And not a single person today just in general, is nervous about getting sick today. You know?
Oh, no. Yes, they are. I have so many patients that are still afraid of getting COVID.
Oh, really? Oh, yes. Well, I guess maybe in the hospitals and the medical community, I guess for myself in day-to-day life, it's like, I don't even think about it like at all.
No,
it's just not become a part of
unfortunately, I think we've healed a lot from it, you and I, like spiritually, like we're strong in our beliefs on that. And unfortunately, I have so many patients still that literally will call me and be like, I think I have COVID. And I have to like talk them off a ledge because they have like probably PTSD, like, like a little bit, like they're stressed from all of that trauma.
Interesting. No, that's really cool because I guess not being in that community of, I guess you're treating sick people and stuff, so you have a much better perspective of that. And I guess it's maybe it's shifted more from being out in the public to they're going to their physician or their
like
their
they're
nurse,
doing a swab
doctor,
on their own. They're not going to the hospital.
Okay, gotcha. So the fear of that is probably still there. It's just more private now and not as mainstream. Gotcha. Yeah. So I was just thinking, I was like, I haven't even given two thoughts about that in years. As far as just like it was such a big deal, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we hardly deal with it. Or at least in my experience, like you go to the store and stuff like that, and you hardly ever see a mask or anything. It's like, how crazy was that was 5 years ago, and it's changed so much. But
yes.
But yeah, to get back on kind of your journey to where you're at. So you've had kids, you're working in the hospital, in the NICU, giving vaccines and stuff, and kind of finding that you're making enemies because you're, I guess, in a sense, just questioning the process. You're asking questions, and it's upsetting some people.
And I was probably a little arrogant. The Lord has softened my heart. I was definitely arrogant and like argumentative. And so that's where, the Holy Spirit has changed me and given me more wisdom through like my Bible studies. And I'm so grateful for that because I definitely was, I was kind of a battle axe of sorts. Like I've been called that. And like, I just was like, very, I have like an advocate personality type, and apparently only like 2% of the population is like an advocate. And so I like strongly care about people if like something's happening to them. And even if they don't care, my husband's like, well, but the thing you need to ask is like, do they care it's happening to them, or do you just care it's happening to them? And so, yeah, I'm so grateful that I learned a lot. It's tough whenever you have to learn the good old fashioned way things, but no, I'm still close with a lot of those people, and it was a good season in my life, and I miss them a lot. But I'm really grateful. So I left the hospital. I had already started nurse for that before I left. I was kind of doing both at the same time, and then when I had my baby, I was like, I can only do one of these. And my husband was like, you need to focus on nurse for that. And so we're doing concierge, in-home, and online wellness. So just teaching people that they don't always have to go to the doctor for every little thing. And we try to keep people out of the doctor's office as much as we can, but we definitely send them when they need to go. Just lots of education. And that's, you started building the website. Yeah, that's how we met.
Right. 2023, right about in there.
I can't believe it.
I know. I was thinking about that the other day. It's like the time has really flown by for that, but it was really cool for me because going through my personal health journey and stuff and just see what you're doing is like, this is awesome. So it's really cool what you've been doing. Just to kind of say, hey, we can still be in the modern medicine space, but also like look at other alternative, like your end goal with Nurse for That is truly like, we want to have you have the best health possible. And that doesn't always mean going the modern medical route, going to a doctor's office, that type of thing, that there are sometimes other solutions for that root cause. And it's really exciting to see, how this progresses, because a lot of this stuff is untouched because you're either fully modern medicine or you're often woo-woo, like doing holistic, crazy stuff. And what's unfortunate about that is that there's a lot of good stuff, but it gets discredited a lot because it goes too far, right?
Right.
We talked a lot today about pendulums, right? So you got some people over here so far this way, and then you got other people in modern medicine who are like, you have to take this medicine. There's no other option, right? And so I feel like people like me are kind of here in the middle going, there's good things about both sides. Why isn't there something in the middle? And Nurse for That seems to be trying to figure out how to live in that middle space, pulling people from both sides and just trying to find balance.
That's our goal. And Dr. McWhorter's really good at it. He is, I think he just, I'm going to get this wrong. I think he just turned 74. And I mean, he's still practicing, has a full practice. We're in his office here in Fort Worth. And he's always been really good at that. He's been kind of under the radar because, he's old school. And, but he has seen a lot and has a lot of knowledge of both sides. So he practiced, most of his career as an OB-GYN, Western medicine. And then he went back to school for functional medicine. So he truly has like both wealths of knowledge. And so I've seen him do both. Like he'll do both practices. And it's really up to the patient if they can. It's really, what I've learned is it's about patience on the patient's part. Yeah. So like, are you willing to be patient because it took decades for your health to get here? It's not going to get better overnight. Are you going to do the hard work, or are we going to go back to the pill? And I don't mean that to say like everyone's lazy or something like that, but like
it's an American culture thing, right? Of like we want solution now.
Yes, we want instant gratification, and you kind of have to realize that and like rewire your expectations.
Well, yeah, and I guess it's a good segue into kind of my background because that's kind of been my experiences, like really learning about the gym, right? And then like slowly chiseling away at that, right? And it takes that time and consistency and discipline to really get the results. And yeah, we are so hardwired from our culture to try to just get that quick fix. We want fast results.
Well, and I'm going to brag on you. You literally, I mean, I wouldn't be recording any of this. Like I was just going to go to people's houses and like help them, right? Like that was what I wanted to do. And then through a lot of our conversations and calls, just going over all the information, I was like, Blake, you have a gift of like communication. Like you are a really good communicator. You need to be sharing knowledge with people. So take me back to like how you got there.
Yeah. So, growing up, real healthy, haven't really had any issues. Like my mom was real big into nutrition and stuff. And, growing up, my dad was in the Air Force. So part of military is like, you get the vaccines, like don't question it. Like it's like a mandatory thing. I'm pretty sure it was like a mandatory, like you don't even have options.
Oh, I think it still is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we did that. And, like my mom after time was like starting to question stuff. And now she's like, I really regret, having ever done that. And it's like, hey, like we've all been at those stages in life where like you're doing the best that you can. And then later you get the clarity. So, and a lot of times I wonder, it's like how much of my quirks and stuff are not really me. It's the vaccines. It's an easy, like, thing to kind of point at, but and just kind of in joking, but,
no, you're just a nerd, Blake.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, just, kind of growing up and, I've just always been a really hard worker and I love to think outside the box. I love to kind of push back against authority figures who are just like, sit down, shut up, don't say anything. I've always like identified that and be like, oh, I'm going to immediately like blow up your whole control system. So it's got me into trouble, right? But I think it is good because there's some people who abuse the authority, abuse the power. And I like to just kind of sit in there in that middle gap to just say like, oh, I want to ask questions. And if you don't want to talk or give questions, like I feel like there's something really wrong about that. And I feel like, it's totally fine if you disagree and if you believe something, but like at least be able to back it up, have discussions, defend it, that type of thing. So I've always kind of had that attitude and spirit about me and still learning, how to control that in a God honoring way. But, kind of getting into college, it was like my time to just kind of be off on my own. And at the time I was building my photography business, kind of learning about entrepreneurship. And that was just a blast for me. It was so much fun. And so I would stay up at like 4 a.m, just learning and building and playing with stuff. And then just trying to wake up at like 7 or 8 to go to class, which is a really bad schedule. And so I'd do that for like the whole week. And then Saturday would come around and like, oh, I got to like take a nap. And I'd take like a 12-hour nap and then like wake up, get like some dinner and then go back and like sleep a full night. But I was going so hard, with that. And I was just having so much fun. I really wasn't considering it. And there were people close to me that were like, hey, you need to get sleep. And I'm like, I hate sleep. I feel like I'm wasting, time. And I'm like, I don't see any negative side effects. So like, not a problem. So I did it all through college, met my wife 2 years into college. Right as I left college, I didn't finish, met a guy that was doing a startup. business. And so I jumped on to help out with him, kind of rebuilt his software company for a version 2, and we took that to an investor. We got approved for the funding for the version 2, like right at the moment that I'm getting married. I'm like, everything's going great. And like Satan just started his attacks like the day that we got married. Family stress and issues and stuff like that. And got pregnant with our first son a couple months after we got married. And at that time, I figured out that guy that we were in business with was a con artist. And so we had to like leave that. And so I thought, hey, I've got my future, mapped out, all these things for sure. And now I had to like go back and restart at the photography business and all that stress of like, now I'm responsible. It's not just me. Like if it's just me, I will, go off the handle and work crazy hours and stuff. But it's like when I'm responsible for other people, like I really want it to be safe and secure. So I put just a ton of stress on me during that time of have a baby on the way. I've got to like start up a new business, to kind of rebuild all that stuff. And the stress, I learned I didn't handle that stress very well. And it started to like really degrade my health. But I was so busy trying to, take care of all the other stuff. I really wasn't paying attention to the health. So my health started to decline worse and worse and worse every year. And like after 7 years, I had gotten, I was like 180 pounds in high school, and I had gotten up to 320 pounds, at my worst. And
you're a big guy. How tall are you?
6'8".
Yeah.
Yeah. So 6'8", 180 was really skinny in high school. And then, 6'8", 320 was, not super bad, but it was not a healthy lifestyle. But, my health just was getting worse and worse. And I didn't really know what was going on. So I started like looking for answers. And so we, started talking to people, and they were like, go check out this holistic doctor. So we started going to some, holistic options and stuff. And I'm kind of the personality that's like, I don't care how crazy it sounds. I'll give anything a chance, and I will try anything as long as it's not going to, be dangerous. And so like we went to this one lady who she did this, maybe you know the term for it, but she would have these electric rods or whatever. So she would like put one on one finger and one on the other finger, and it would send a current through your body. And so the graph, you could watch it on the screen, would have little peaks where there was disturbances and stuff. And it would correlate with like an organ or a body part or something that would have damage. And so I'm thinking like, this all sounds really weird, but like, I'll give it a shot. And it really convinced me that there was something there, because my wife had she completely tore her rotator cuff on her right arm, her right shoulder, playing volleyball. And I'm watching on the screen as she's being tested, and you see this big spike in the shoulder section. She goes, oh, you've had traumatic injury to your right shoulder. And I was like, how in the world would you know that? And I'm looking at the data. So I'm like, there's something there. Like the body has electric currents through it, and the muscles remember trauma and stuff. And we were able to read that. Now, she had some good stuff there, but the way she went about treating it was like, here, put some oils on it, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, and I find this a lot, right, is that there can be some truths and some
right,
lies
with everything.
in everything.
We're all human.
Yeah. And so, we're kind of going through there, and I'm just going to different doctors, trying to learn, more stuff. And went to one guy, and he kind of hit on the point of like, he's like, oh, your hormones are really messed up. But he was like, you're technically depressed. He's like, maybe get you on depression meds. And I was like, I don't want to get on meds. But it got me started looking into, well, maybe my hormones are messed up, and it started testing testosterone. And that was really what the issue was. It's a silent killer. And I've used this analogy where it's like, if you break your arm, you can look at your arm and go, here's where the pain is. Like, it's pretty easy to identify. We need to look here. But when your testosterone starts to tank, you slowly, like a frog in a pot of boiling water, right? Like you slowly get uncomfortable, and you're not really sure where it's coming from. And so it's like, man, I was very optimistic in college, and all of a sudden I'm like being more pessimistic, and I'm being more irritable. I have less patience, and I'm like, this isn't really me. And at my worst, it was really like I was a totally different person. It was really weird. Like my mind would be here, going like, something's wrong, but I'm not sure what it is. It was just a very confusing time. And, I'd be doing all these different workouts, and I tried the keto diet and the carnivore diet. I tried all these diets, and like nothing was working. And so everybody was going, well, you're just not working hard enough. And like that really gets under my skin, because I'm a very hard worker.
You are.
And I was like, no, like I'll just work harder, And so I did all these workouts, and like nothing was changing. And eventually kind of found out, I was like, oh, my testosterone was, I think at 160 was the lowest. And, you really should be up around 700 to 1,000. Like, having gone through all the different ranges, like, really I started feeling normal in the 700 to 1,000. But the doctor's range said, oh, if you're above 300, you're okay. Well, when I started going up through the ranges, fixing my testosterone at 300, I still felt like horrible.
So do you probably know this now, but most people don't realize that all of the lab values are based on reference range.
Yes.
So our reference range is our population. So most of our population is unhealthy.
Yes.
So a reference range on an unhealthy population is not going to be the ideal range.
Yeah. And so going through that, I'm a big guy. So usually, like, if I take Tylenol, it'll say, like, take 2, right? And it's like 2 does nothing for me, as I usually have to take 3 or 4 for it to actually,
oh my gosh, Blake. You haven't told me that.
Well, it's a lot more mass, and it's not a normal, dosage for things. And so that's just what I've kind of found personally, is like, if I want things to actually kick in, it's usually more than what is expected for most people. And so, as I'd started following this doctor, I didn't know how to go about getting testosterone. So I went to the doctor. He's like, all right, got me a prescription. I'm like, you have to have a prescription for this. And he was like telling me how much to take. And so I started taking, I'm like, this isn't doing anything. And I almost gave up on it, but I decided to go talk to somebody else. And he's like, dude, you're a huge person. He's like, that's way too little. He's like, I take more than that, and I'm smaller than you. So on my own, which may not have been a good idea, I was like, I'm just going to take more just to see if it helps. And I started feeling better after a week or 2. And I was like, oh man, like, finally getting some sort of response after like 7 years of declining. I'm like, I start feeling that spark come back of like being more happy and having more energy, and stuff like that. So I kept taking it, and I would go get tested regularly just to make sure everything's good. Like, because I know your blood getting thick is a problem with that. And as I started going up through the numbers and stuff like that, I was evaluating how I was feeling. So like, forget what the numbers say. Like, I really care about how I feel and if I'm healthy. I went back to him, and I got it up to like 1,000, and I finally felt like normal. And he was so mad that I pushed it that high. He's like, you're way too high. Super dangerous. He's like, you should get down. I'm like, but I feel normal. And he wouldn't listen to me. And that really kind of turned me off to doctors and stuff, because I'm like, are you listening to me and wanting to have my best interests and really get me feeling good? Or do you just want me to check the box, that you're told to check? And I went and started talking to like bodybuilders and stuff, and they use it, and they're like, yeah, like they had the similar response that I did. And they're like, I've been doing this for 10, 20 years. And they're like, you're spot on. So I'm like, thinking about it, I'm like, the doctor doesn't use it. So what authority does he have to like direct me if he doesn't have that experience using it himself? And so I kind of got pessimistic towards doctors in general, but since then it's like, having empathy for where they come from, right? Like, they're taught certain things, and they want to make sure they don't make a mistake.
They're overburdened.
There's that. And then they don't want to make a mistake and guide you wrong. Right. So I understand. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be in a doctor's position at all. Being in charge of your health is a very big weight to carry, type of thing. But I started looking, more into like health and stuff, and going, okay, well, why did my testosterone tank? Like, I was super healthy athlete, in high school. And then all of a sudden I like, at my worst, I was thinking like, I'm not going to live past 40. That's just like what my internal self was like feeling like. I'm like, the way I'm going, I do not see how it's possible to live past 40. So I was like, all right, what? And I was kind of mad, because I'm like, other people haven't been talking about it. Because once I started talking about it, they're like, oh yeah, I'm on testosterone too. And I'm like, nobody talks about this because they feel like it's an issue with their manhood.
Right.
Right. Like, you're less of a man if you have to take testosterone, or if your body doesn't produce enough. Right. And I'm like, what a silly thing, because it's like, if people would have talked about it, I may have found that much earlier, much sooner, and gotten a solution earlier. So I started just talking about it to guys, because they see the change, like, dude, you changed, significantly, like, what happened? And so I would just be honest and tell them, what my journey's been. And it got like, I had about 30 different guys end up saying, well, maybe I should go get tested because I feel similar. And everybody that went and tested was below 400. And except for one, there was one guy who was like in the 600s. And it just told me, I was like, okay, so this isn't just me. Like, this is everybody. Every
well,
guy's
our
dealing with this.
environment is making all of our hormones.
So that's why I started looking at, like, okay, since all the guys are doing this, that means we're all sharing the same things that are making us unhealthy, which for me made sense to be food, water, and environment, right? Like, those are the things that we all share together. And so starting to look into that, right? Like, start seeing like how much stuff that they're putting in our city water, fluoride and all these other chemicals. And it's like, those have got to be disrupting hormones. I don't have any, proof or data or haven't done any research with it, but it just makes sense, right? Common sense. And then food too. If you can't read half of the ingredients on these foods, it's like, those have got to be disrupting hormones too.
Well, our clothes are disrupting hormones. We literally are wearing plastic.
And if you're using bleach and cleaning chemical, like, all that stuff has got to be disruptive. And so it's probably not just one. It's probably not just food. It's probably just a combination of everything, right? And so it's kind of got me into, seeing how much my life has changed and stuff, to be like, want to get the word out on this or learn more about it and stuff. So, right about the same time that I'm coming out of that and learning all this stuff, I see what you're doing. And I'm like, yes, like a biblical approach that God has designed your body to work a certain way. And when we disrupt that, there are consequences. And I want to learn, like, what can we do to benefit the design, the way it's designed to function, and optimize ourselves, based off of that. And sometimes that does mean going to a doctor, because I got sick. It was funny. I didn't realize you dealt with the same things in college. I had mono pneumonia, and they wrongly diagnosed me with strep throat. So they gave me antibiotics for strep throat, and I got jaundice because it was not, I actually had mono.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was like, then I took antibiotics for that, and it was just like, and all that was back to back to back. So like a lot of sicknesses like kind of kicked off that decline of health. But, but I was so sick though, if I did not go to the doctor and get those antibiotics, I don't know if my body could have pulled out of that, because I had just pushed it so hard, so that there's a need for the modern medicine, shots, pills, that type of thing. But there's also, in my personal belief, if we do things the right way and have good balance with our health, and stress was such a big issue for me, that it wasn't just what I was eating or the environment. It was also, how at peace am I? And then where's my walk with the Lord? Because that's currently what I'm working through, is kind of hitting a wall. And I'm going, all this bitterness, unforgiveness that I haven't dealt with is really causing a physical reaction, causing me to stall out, on progress and that type of thing. So yeah, that's kind of my process of, not coming from a medical background, but just seeing the results personally and, doing my own research, having some common sense with stuff, just wanting to learn more about God's design for health, and then what we could do with that, but also how modern medicine can play a role in all the research done and stuff like that. But there's also acknowledging that there is corruption, because there's money to be made in the medical industry, just to be able to separate, well, what is driven through profit, pursuit, and then what is actually driven through trying to care for people and make people healthier. Because there is an incentive to keep people sick. Like, it's just a part of it. But what's strange is, like, I meet people like you, and most of the nurses and doctors genuinely want to help the people. Right. But they're only taught one way of dealing with it. Right. So for me, I'm a problem solver. So my marketing background is, I work with a lot of different companies trying to help them get off the ground. So I have to learn what they do and problem solve, with that. So I'm looking at it saying, okay, here's a problem. There's a problem with this whole industry and people's health, and I want to find a solution. So that's kind of where, I'm jumping in. It's like, at least at a minimum, I can have discussions and then learn, about that, and try to pull out the good information, try to find that good middle ground, right? Not go so far over here where you're crazy, in woo-woo land, but also, like, take the valuable knowledge that we've gotten to have through all the research and science and medicine and glean those beneficial things from there. So,
yes. I mean, I've been really lucky. I don't know about you, but yes, I got very sick, but then I quickly learned how to feel better. And I'm still like a pretty sickly person. Like, I'm small for whatever reason. I always say that I'm like the runt in my family because I'm so small. And then I'm just like kind of weak as I'm like aging. I'm noticing, I'm more prone to inflammation, pain, all those things. And like you said, what I've learned is like, I think a lot of it's linked with fear-based. So like growing up, I had a lot of trauma. Like my parents divorced when I was young. Both my parents are wonderful people. They just didn't, it just didn't work out, and they didn't have the tools or the support system to like get them through that time, right? And so that gave my sister and I a lot of trauma. I mean, it just does. Like when you have a divorced family, like you're going to have trauma. And, you're meant to have both parents. And so, I kind of lived in fight or flight for the first quarter of my life. I mean, like I was 25, maybe 28 before I even realized like, oh, I don't have to be running on the hamster wheel. Like I can sit down, like that. I didn't learn that until definitely closer to 30. And now that I have learned mostly from our pastor at River Point in Fort Worth, Michael, like mostly from being on staff with him. I accidentally got on staff at church, but it was by design from the Lord because he knew I needed to learn from this man. But he just taught me like, at any time, all of us can like stand under the Lord's rest. Like we can lean into the rest. And that is not what our world teaches us. Our world teaches us that we need to hustle and that we need to work hard or we're not doing it right.
Yeah, especially when you get in the entrepreneur vein, which I did. It was very much just like you got to sacrifice everything. You got to be willing to do the things that other people aren't going to do. You got to pull all-nighters. And I fully believe that. I mean, it made sense to me that like, oh, if I work harder than anybody else, obviously like you'll come out ahead. What I didn't consider was all of the health consequences that come with that, right? And
well, when you said that, when you were talking about, my head went to, like I could hear in your voice, like fear, like you were having fear. And then you started talking about mental health. And that's what I was saying is like, I've really learned that like, because now, I mean, I see patients that are sick every single week. Like I go into people's homes that have the flu, COVID, strep, you name it. And like, I walk away not sick, because I'm not living in fear. Yeah. When COVID hit the news that week, I was so afraid. I went to Whole Foods and loaded like 2 carts of food because I was just like panicking that my little babies weren't going to have food at home. And I literally was carrying the groceries up the steps of our house and I fell ill with COVID. And it was just bonkers, right? Like I literally got it the week it broke the news because I was living in fear.
Right.
And that was kind of the first time I realized like I like literally willed myself to get sick. I was so afraid.
Yeah, I think I was listening to a podcast recently. I'll have to go find it and share it with you because it was all talking about unforgiveness and bitterness and how it manifests itself. I think it was on Tucker's podcast, but I was like, man, what he's saying is not wrong based on my own personal experiences. Like, you hold on to stuff. It starts to rot you from the inside. And what's crazy is I've had the pleasure of getting to meet several World War II veterans, and all of them are like super strong in their 90s. Like one guy I met was 99, and when he gave me a handshake, it was like crushed my hand. And I'm like, you're in great health, but he just was so happy and like had such a great outlook on life. You could tell his inner soul was just joyful, not bitter, not stressed. He was just like enjoying life. And it's like, but you could feel the strength come through his handshake. And you could see it. We were walking down the hall to go to the cafeteria, and it was like hard to keep up with him. I mean,
my gosh.
The dude was just like, great. And I mean, 99 years old, right? And, it definitely like from the heart comes, a lot of our health and strength and stuff. And, even it's like, start looking at the Bible, it says a cheerful heart is good medicine. And it is like so true once you've lived, in the darkness of bitterness and unforgiveness and, hatred and anger and stuff. Like you can feel that take a toll on it. I think everybody can relate to that, just at a basic level that, you're not optimal when you're in that zone, and, I just remember I was just on cloud 9 all the time in college just because I was doing what I enjoyed doing. I loved helping and serving people. It was just like, I was just thriving. I was doing so much at the time that I can't even imagine doing now. But my heart was just in a great place at the time, and stuff. So I think the Bible has a lot more to say about that. And that's currently what I'm studying and looking into. But it's like, God designed us to work a certain way. And we do have energy within us to a certain degree, electrical currents, like our brain functions with electrical currents, right? And I think that, the generator, what's creating that power and stuff really comes from our thoughts, positive thoughts, and just good attitudes and being at peace about things. So, I mean, I've seen it firsthand personally, and it's something where I want to figure out how to like bottle that up and then show it to other people or hand it off to other people,
Well, fortunately, I don't think we have to. I think like the Holy Spirit does it, right? Like that's why I wanted us to do this, because I just feel like all these conversations are like people just need to know they can.
Yeah, that's what I mean by bottling it up, right? It's like the conversation, the information, right?
You're right.
Just to show people that side of things and just get people to just consider that side of things, just because it's really weird how like we separate like physical health is like go to the gym, eat good food, but then like spiritual stuff for some reason is totally separate, and they don't like we act like they don't mingle together. And the more that like I'm looking at how they're interconnected, I'm like, oh, they're like in the same bucket. Like they're not just interconnected, they're
intertwined.
Yeah, they're intertwined. You cannot separate them. Mm-hmm. And so it's like having better understanding of that for me is just exciting about like what can you unlock, physically, and when your physical state is good, you're also more happy and healthy. So like as you work on both of those, they actually feed off of each other.
Right.
So I'm kind of in that beginning stages, so I don't know enough to like direct people, but I know that there's something there, and that's where like through you and other people, that we know, just to be able to ask questions and pull that out of them, and get to learn that. And then, trying to do that in a podcast format. So it's not only beneficial for us, but it can literally reach endless people,
right.
With having the benefits that we have of digital age, and the internet.
Why do you think we chose freedom?
Yeah.
And we chose it prior to recent events.
Yeah. Well, that actually happened before, Charlie, which was, kind of a confirmation,
mm-hmm.
From God, right? That we're kind of on the right track. And we kind of sat on it, just trying to say like, well, we need a good name for this. And we sat on it for weeks and weeks. And the word, as I was reading verses and stuff, it was just the word freedom was like, that's a great concept, right? Because, we're all looking for freedom personally from struggles in life, difficulties and stuff like that. And really where that's found is through God's word. And when we understand what we need to do, then we can actually put the work in and go do it. Otherwise, we're working in vain. And it's super depressing when you're working really hard and getting no results. And I know that because of what I went through, with low testosterone. Is like you work so hard, like do all these workouts, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, nothing. It's so depressing. But when you're working in the right direction, because you have information that you need to have, then you're like, it's just so rewarding to be like, yeah, you put in work and you get better and see results and get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So, yeah, I'm really excited about, what you're doing, primarily, and anything I can do to kind of come along and help with conversations and stuff and just a different perspective. That's what I've always loved about doing the marketing stuff is I'm not in your business. And so I can ask all the questions that I know that the outside's looking at. And, I think that that's good to not have so much knowledge into it. So that way I can just be like kind of, ignorant to some of the stuff and just say like, what is this, and then have that information, given.
Yeah. I mean, you have a really good ability of like weighing the content and communicating effectively, whereas I can go squirrel a little bit. So you keep me on track.
Yeah. Well, that's all of us, right? So, but I'm really interested to talk to Dr. McWhorter and Michael and just other people who in their own personal lives, are learning different elements. And I think, what we've learned or what I've learned from just recent events and stuff is the more communication that we have on these topics will only bring more light. And when there's more light, there's less darkness.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just think that that's the way out of all these problems that we're having right now is just have more conversations, have more truth out there. And, a lot of this stuff I know is divisive, which I'm actually excited when something's divisive because it's like there's something super valuable there that is getting blocked by emotions, by personal agendas and stuff. So it's like, if we can get through all that and just have great conversations, like then you get the riches of all of the content that people have to share.
And that's kind of why we started this, because when we were having these conversations, it's like, you are really good at keeping a level head and pointing to truth instead of like letting the emotions get in the way.
Yeah. Well, personally, I want people to disagree with me, which I know is like kind of weird for most people, right? Because most people just like, I want to be right, and I want to surround myself with people who agree with me. And I'm like, but there's no growth there. There's no challenge there. And one of the great things I've gotten to learn from being around so many veterans is, when you intentionally want to make yourself uncomfortable, then you actually grow. Then you actually get character. And while it's difficult in the meantime, like, your reward is so much greater than whatever struggle you go through trying to get to it. So I love finding people that disagree. And I love it when there's two people that disagree, but they can have a conversation. Is a lot of times they find they have way more in common than what they initially thought. But it's so weird. We've gotten to a point in our culture where it's like, we're just not going to talk if we disagree. And that's actually what I'm really looking forward to, is I want to find people with different backgrounds, different perspectives than me, and be like, I'm sure I'm missing a lot. So help me fill in these gaps, and have different perspectives and that type of thing. So that's what's exciting for me.
So we haven't really talked about this, but I think my goal for this is like, I don't want this to be like a left or a right podcast, or I want this to be a kingdom-minded perspective. Yeah. Like, I want that to be the first priority over any other agenda.
Well, that gets a lot of people in trouble, right? When you're trying to fight for a side, both sides are wrong in certain elements, right? So it's like, it's just stupid to try to defend a side. The left is wrong on some things, and the right's wrong on some things. The left is actually right on a lot of things. And so is the right, but we're not coming together. We're so geared to defending instead of, coming together on certain things. And I don't know, just once you see it, then you're just kind of like, yeah, this is so dumb. Why are we doing this? But I know at times it's, it's really easy. I think it's just human nature. You just get caught up in wanting to be right. It's a human nature response, but no growth happens. So like, really, you get many years down the road, what's the point of defending your position if you didn't go anywhere, right?
Exactly.
So I don't know. I think it'll be a ton of fun, and hey, the hardest part is doing the first episode,
Yes.
And so,
well, thank you, Caitlin and Chase, for letting us come and peel away to record this, and I'm really excied to see what happens.
Well, I mean, that could be great conversations too, especially when you're married. Oh. Your spouse grows you so much, and they have so much value to bring in, and stuff. And so, what's funny to me, I found that like marriage is like, all of the weak points that you have, God designed somebody specifically to like dig in and help you address those weak points. And so that's why I know there's so much conflict in marriage, but it's such a beautiful thing, though.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about getting this information out. I was thinking about my parents and how they didn't have this. Like, they didn't have a cell phone. They didn't have, like, you had to go to the library to, like, read something or, like, listen to the radio, right? And so if you were isolated and, like, you didn't have, like, a robust network of, like, wise counsel around you, then you were isolated. And I think that that's why during that time period that, like, so many people got divorced, because it was, like, the height of divorce in our country. And I think it's because people didn't have what they needed to like press on. Like, they didn't have the community group. They didn't have the podcasts, the book, like it just wasn't this like wealth of knowledge that we have now.
Yeah. Well, you said isolation. I'm like, man, we could probably do a whole 2 hours on isolation. And this is something I like to do, is just try to imagine if I'm in my enemy's shoes, right? If I'm in Satan's shoes, what would be my strategy? Because if I can understand what his strategy is, then I can kind of see how he's working and better defend myself from it. But if I'm trying to attack somebody, the first thing I want to do is get you off on your own, because it's much easier to take you down when you're alone than to try to hit you and have the group see and maybe fight back on your behalf. And so isolation, I feel like, is such a key thing, and it's very slow, sneaky process, right? It's like it happens very gradually, and before you know it, you're just looking around, you're like, oh, I'm by myself. And yeah, you say isolation, I get fired up about that, because it was certainly at my lowest point, definitely was really isolated, and Satan was going to have his way with me. But the great thing about, being a Christian and having a relationship with the Lord was, even though I was by myself, in human concept, the Holy Spirit was there, still and still fighting and protecting. So, but it was super dangerous. And it just came from not paying attention. But I think, if there had been conversations about, hey, are you getting off on your own? Like, that would have been a game changer, but it was never even brought up, right? So hopefully, like, even just talking about it in conversation, just getting people aware of, like, oh, maybe I am a little isolated. That alone right there, just getting yourself around good counsel, good relationships, is a massive first step. That's probably, one of the most beneficial things we can do.
I agree.
Because, Satan wants to kill, steal, and destroy. And, it talks about him walking around like a roaring lion. Well, if you watch any National Geographic, the first thing they do is they find the one that's struggling a little bit, and then they try to separate him from the herd. And so, we get a firsthand account to just kind of watch how that process works in a violent way. And it's like, that's kind of what's happening with our souls and our, personal walks and stuff. Right. So, but yeah, I know there's so many exciting topics, we could get on. The hard part is going to be not running down rabbit trails and getting fired up about stuff, but
you'll keep me in line. Thank you for setting all this up.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap it up, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.
Okay.
Cool.